welcome to this explainer. So I recently fell down an absolute rabbit hole reading this profoundly rich text by the thinker Abu Yarab al-Marzouki, and honestly, it completely flipped how I view the philosophy we consume online. Today, we're going to dismantle exactly how we engage with these massive ideas and uncover the huge hidden architecture beneath them. If you've ever felt like complex philosophy has just been reduced to catchy little quotes on your social media feed, you're going to find this absolutely fascinating. Let's dive right in.
Okay, let's start with a really common modern illusion. We literally see it everywhere, right? Treating brilliant, complex fragments from monumental thinkers like Nietzsche or Parmenides as just isolated, catchy quotes to be endlessly retweeted or shared. But the text warns us about this. It says that out of context, these flashes of thought become mere popular wisdom. We mistake these tiny fragments for the entire philosophical thought. It's kind of like, well, it's like looking at a single beautiful leaf and thinking you completely understand the entire forest.
So the author draws this fascinating contrast between that shallow, popular wisdom we just talked about and an architectonic system. Now, the author argues that true philosophy isn't just a random collection of isolated aha moments or flashes of insight. It's deeply architectonic, meaning even the most fragmented poetic thoughts are actually rooted in a highly structured fertile soil. There are deep roots and logical bridges connecting them right beneath the surface. To really grasp philosophy, you have to understand that soil, not just admire the fruit.
Which brings us to Section 1, Wijdan and Furqan, the translation.
All right, let's unpack this first concept. Think of Wijdan as that sudden, totally overwhelming existential flash. It represents this deep, ineffable human intuition. The source text actually describes it so beautifully. It pictures it as a powerful, rushing waterfall crashing down from a high mountain. It's raw, it's pure, and it's incredibly difficult to just put into mere words.
On the flip side, we have Furqan. If Wijdan is that wild, crashing waterfall, Furqan is the solid rock that it crashes onto to create clarity. It represents reason, logical distinction, and the structured articulation of human thought. It's basically the solid framework that catches all that raw emotion and gives it a shape and a language that other people can actually understand.
So here is the absolutely crucial point. The ultimate, almost impossible battle for any philosopher is the translation between these two states. Think about it. How do you translate that unutterable, dizzying inner feeling of Wijdan into the clear, logical, structured language of Furqan without losing its raw essence? The author states that this specific, agonizing act of translation is literally the core engine of all genuine philosophical pursuit. You know, if you've ever felt a profound emotion, but just couldn't find the words to explain it to a friend, you've actually experienced a miniature version of this exact struggle. This leads us naturally to Section 2, the 5 philosophical styles. Depending on exactly how thinkers handle this monumental translation between those flashes of intuition and those solid bridges of logic, the author breaks them down into this fascinating spectrum. At number 1, we have the pure flash. Think of philosophers like Nietzsche, who primarily present the raw Wijdan. At number 2, thinkers like Plato or Avicenna actually separate the flashes from the logical bridges into totally different works. Then, number 3 intertwines them both in the exact same space, which, let's be honest, is exactly why titans like Kant and Hegel can give us such a massive headache to read. And finally, numbers 4 and 5 are your analytical and interpretive critics. They aren't necessarily creating that original spark, but they expertly analyze the bridges and flashes of those first 3 styles.
Moving on, the author boldly critiques a very common modern cliché, this idea of the right to philosophical difference. The text argues that true uniqueness isn't something you force or demand. It's entirely organic and inevitable. Think of it like distinct musical instruments exploring the exact same universal melody. A piano and a violin are going to sound naturally different even when they're playing the exact same notes. You don't have to force the difference, right? True philosophical creation is inherently unique to the specific individual playing the instrument.
But there's a catch here. Just as you need physical hearing to enjoy actual music, you have to develop specific inner senses to truly grasp these different philosophical melodies. The text outlines these essential inner senses. There's basira, which is like an inner sight or insight, samira, for deep inner listening, and thawiga, an inner tasting. The author warns that without actively developing these internal faculties, you'll basically remain deaf to the profound symphonies of the great philosophers.
Let's zoom out to the macro level now in Section 3, Languages of Civilizational Sovereignty.
I was totally fascinated to see how the text traces this historical baton pass.
Only a very few languages have ever achieved the sheer civilizational weight needed to become universal vessels for this global philosophical pursuit. It starts with Greek in the post-Macedonian era, then passes to Arabic during its Golden Age, over to Latin in the European Middle Ages, and later to German in modern philosophy. These weren't just popular languages of their time, they carried the absolute weight of global scientific and philosophical thought.
The author highlights an incredibly unique linguistic comparison here. He really praises German for its structural, sculptural nature, where visual meaning is literally shaped right into the logical structure of the word itself. But he emphasizes that Arabic's derivational root system, where words organically grow out of a single core root, uniquely balances phonetic intuition, that wijdan, with logical structure, the furqan. This precise balance, the author argues, is what makes it such a profoundly capable language for deep philosophical translation.
And that brings us to Section 4, the Umayyads and Arabic science.
The text makes a really compelling point here. It argues that it was the Umayyad Caliphate, specifically under the rule of Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, that deliberately drove the revolution to make Arabic the universal administrative and scientific language of a massive empire. This was definitely not an accident. It was a highly strategic civilizational project that literally laid the groundwork for centuries of scientific and philosophical thought.
Now, this Arabic philosophical dominance eventually led to a massive ripple effect in Europe. We see what's called a double translation ripple. First, Arabic texts were heavily studied. Second, they were translated into Latin by Europeans, initially as a way to defend themselves ideologically against the Islamic Empire. But then, third, this profound exposure actually forced Europeans to return to their own ancient Greek sources just to bridge the scientific gaps they discovered. It's this incredible, almost ironic cycle of knowledge transfer that was driven by both conflict and curiosity.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Revolution Against Tyrants.
So what is the point of all this? The text reveals that the ultimate goal of true philosophical and Quranic thought is total liberation from two deeply intertwined tyrannies. First, you have the political and material tyranny, symbolically represented by the figure of Pharaoh. And second, the spiritual and clerical tyranny, symbolized by Haman. Philosophy, in this view, isn't just about sitting around thinking. It is fundamentally about breaking these specific chains.
This dual liberation aims for two very concrete, real-world outcomes. Number one, establishing Republican democratic governance based on mutual consultation. And number two, establishing absolute individual moral responsibility, completely destroying the need for any oppressive clerical middleman. It's all about empowering the individual against both the absolute state and the religious establishment. And honestly, this isn't just ancient history, it's the very foundation of how we view individual liberty today.
Ultimately, the author emphasizes that any genuine creative or philosophical act is inherently revolutionary. Why? Well, because the very act of translating your deep, honest human intuition into a logical, spoken reality naturally threatens unjust, stagnant systems. True creativity doesn't ask for permission, right? It just naturally challenges the oppressive status quo. To close out our explainer today, the author leaves us with a deeply personal, almost provocative challenge. He says, you cannot truly grasp philosophy until you have personally felt both the dizzying vertigo of intuition and the profound bewilderment of reason. So, have you?